soul cleaveth to the dust. Quicken thou me according to thy word. I have declared my ways, and thou heardest me. Teach me thy statutes, make me to understand the way of thy precepts. So shall I talk of thy wondrous works. My soul melteth for heaviness. Strengthen thou me according to thy word. Remove from me the way of lying, and grant me thy law graciously. I have chosen.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in the book of Job. We're going to pick it up here at chapter 10. Job is continuing his speech. We read this part, but we're going to read it again. My soul is weary of my life. I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say unto God, do not condemn me. Show me wherefore thou contendest with me. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress, that thou shouldest despise the work of thine hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked? Hast thou eyes of flesh, or seest thou as a man seeth? Are thy days as the days of a man? Are thy years as man's days? That thou inquirest after mine iniquity, and searchest after my sin? Thou knowest that I am not wicked, and there is none that can deliver out of thine hand. Thine hands have made me and fashioned me, together round about, yet thou dost destroy me. Remember, I beseech thee, that thou hast made me as the clay. And wilt thou bring me to dust again? Hast thou not poured me out as milk, and curdled me like cheese? Thou hast clothed me with skin and flesh, and hast fenced me with bones and sinews. Thou hast granted me life and favor, and thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. And these things hast thou hid in thine heart. I know that this is with thee. If I sin, then thou mockest me, and thou wilt not acquit me for mine iniquity. If I be wicked, woe unto me. And if I be righteous, yet will I not lift up my head. I am full of confusion. Therefore see thou mine affliction, for it increaseth. Thou huntest me as a fierce lion, and again thou showest thyself marvelous upon me. Thou renewest thy witness against me, increasest thine indignation upon me. Changes in war are against me. Wherefore then hast thou brought me forth out of the womb? Oh, that I had given up the ghost, and no eye had seen me. I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Before I go, whence I shall not return, even to the land of darkness and the shadow of death. A land of darkness as darkness itself, and of the shadow of death without any order, and where light is as darkness. All day I'm fine now, suddenly I'm congested. 1 second. Then answered Zophar, the Naamathite, and said, should not the multitude of words be answered? And should a man full of talk be justified? Should thy lies make men hold their peace? And when thou mockest, shall no man make thee ashamed? For thou hast said, my doctrine is pure, and I am clean in thine eyes. But oh, that God would speak, and open his lips against thee, and that he would show thee the secrets of wisdom, that they are double to that which is. Know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thine iniquity deserveth. Canst thou by searching find out God? Canst thou find out the Almighty unto perfection? It is as high as heaven. What canst thou do? Deeper than hell. What canst thou know? The measure thereof is longer than the earth, and broader than the sea. If he cut off, and shut up, or gather together, then who can hinder him? For he knoweth vain men. He seeth wickedness also, and will he not then consider it? For a vain man would be wise, though man be born like a wild ass's colt. If thou prepare thine heart, and stretch out thine hands toward him, if thine iniquity be in thine hand, put it far away, and let not wickedness dwell in thy tabernacles. For then shalt thou lift up thy face without spot, yea, thou shalt be steadfast, and shalt not fear. Because thou shalt forget thy misery, and remember it as waters that pass away. And thine age shall be clearer than the noonday. Thou shalt shine forth, thou shalt be as the morning, and thou shalt be secure, because there is hope. Yea, thou shalt dig about thee, and thou shalt take thy rest in safety. Also, thou shalt lie down, and none shall make thee afraid. Yea, many shall make suit unto thee. But the eyes of the wicked shall fail, and they shall not escape, and their hope shall be as the giving up of the ghost. Job's first line there. We're not going to get through all that. But I like his first line. Because you can tell he's, no doubt, but ye are the people, and wisdom shall die with you. But I haven't, the last word, so to speak, And the last one, you guys know better than me, I guess, huh? And that's an interesting thing. When I read, Zophar, it makes me think, do Christians not like to read this? Because in Job's friends, whom the Lord rebukes, do they see themselves in their own thinking? I don't know. I know for some people this is true, because even among Christians, even though Jesus himself denied such a thing, or he affirmed such a thing, you could say, that sometimes, yes, there are consequences for sin. Sometimes we sin and something happens, and that's a consequence of our sin. And that's a sort of a built-in punishment for the sin. But, something's not so. It's not a punishment. Like Job isn't being punished. There's no reason for him to suffer, except that the Lord wishes to allow it. Job correctly understands this, that God is ultimately, Satan's ultimately behind it. Well, God could have said, nah, I don't need to test him. I know he's a great servant. Yeah, I don't need to test him. I know it. I'm all knowing. I'm God. So no, I'm not going to let you hurt him. What are you talking about? No, he approved. And that's a hard truth that we all need to know. Because it's not, because people have this sense, like Christians think, oh, well, I'll never suffer tribulation. The wrath of God is not for you. That is true. But there's all kinds of trouble that has nothing to do with the wrath of God right here. And notice, who is it that God is using as the cat's paw here? It's Satan. Satan does all the hurting of Job. God doesn't lift a finger against him. All he does is withdraw his protection. Satan is restrained. That's a New Testament concept that probably comes right from this Job idea. And we see the devil interacting with the Lord. Like Paul said, he is restrained until he be taken out of the way, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall destroy with the brightness of his mouth, with the spirit of his mouth, and with the brightness of his coming. The whole motif Satan, as Paul says, what is he? The accuser of our brethren. Oh, that wasn't Paul. Well, anyways, it's rejoice ye heavens, and ye dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you. Having great wrath, he knoweth he hath but a short time. Some people think that's a past event. I think that's yet to come. But this is a model of it. When that restraint is taken out of the way and Satan is given almost full permission to do whatever he wants with God's servant. In this case, he is not allowed to kill Job. But we know from the book of Revelation, if you happen to be an end-time saint, that he will not be able to kill the servants of God until they finish their testimony. Also, we know that the torment that Satan and his army is able to inflict upon mankind, those with the seal of God are immune to that torment. So the Lord does give us quite a bit of protection here. You know what I mean? So while we have a certain amount of vulnerability, because the Lord is willing to allow the wicked to go through the full measure and to think they're getting away with it, to go, he's not going to interrupt them killing us. He's going to let them do that so they can fill up their sin. He isn't going to save them from that foolishness. He will allow it. You will be saved from it through the resurrection. You got to trust in God. It's a real thing. But it's kind of frightening because you got to die. That's why I say that the manner of death is important. I want to die a saint's death, which is not necessarily, you could die a saint, you could live a saint's life and die in peace, I suppose. Many have. But there's no guarantee of that. Your peace is guaranteed in the everlasting peace of God's kingdom, not in this world. Not in any particular time. There's no, if you're not in the end times, you can suffer all kinds of tribulations. God's not going to pour his wrath out on you, but he may allow Satan to have his way to a degree, even to the degree that maybe Satan will, like in the end times, he is allowed to kill them sometimes. Just like he killed the apostles. Just like he killed the Lord. Or the people of the prince that shall come, I will say unto God, my soul is weary of my life. I will leave my complaint upon myself. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. That's how he feels. It's descriptive. I don't think any of that is very difficult to understand. I will leave my complaint upon myself. I wonder what he means by that. I'm going to just sweep over to the NIV for that. If I want an interpretation, I don't mind the NIV. If I want a translation, I'll go someplace else because it's unreliable as a translation. There's a lot of things that are just, I just opened Photoshop. No, I don't want that. Okay. Therefore, I will give free rein to my complaints and speak out. Okay, it certainly makes sense contextually what they chose to say. I will leave my complaint upon myself. Whatever. I will give free rein to my complaint. Whatever. I think that's the right spirit of it. Because he's saying, I'm going to talk about this. Okay? I'm going to complain openly. I say to God, I will say to God, do not condemn me. Show me where thou contendest with me. He wants to know, what have I done? Why? He's pretty sure he's innocent. And the Lord also has, we already know that's true. Like I said, it doesn't mean he's perfect from God's perspective. God considers him perfect. That doesn't mean he never sinned in his whole life, but like they said, his doctrine is pure. He is not wicked, as he says, and that he makes it, I think, pretty clear. Why do you contend with me? What does contend mean here? I'm going to look it up real quick. It's the word reeb, to strive or contend. We've had that one before. Not in Job, but contend is fine. Why is this? Why are you engaging with me like that? There was, because sometimes you have this peaceful day-to-day relationship with God. Sometimes. Day goes upon day, one day after another, one day to the next. Things are kind of the same. You engage with the Lord, but then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled. And all of a sudden you're in all kinds of crazy trouble. Like I said, from a New Testament perspective, I think we should have a lot less trouble with this, as far as understanding. Because like I said, Paul and the apostles and Jesus, a servant is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. Blessed are you when they persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. So when bad things happen to you for doing good, as a Christian, Jesus has already taught us that that's just par for the course. You live a Christian life. At some point, that can be the case. But but Job does not understand that. Job has thought all his life, if I do what's right, God will reward me, and He'll be pleased with me. And for the most part, in life, when we do what's right, things go well, right? But doing the right thing is not a guarantee, because the world we live in is not a world that has been optimized for, human pleasure and satisfaction. It always leaves something to be desired. And also, in this world, we are mortal. We're going to die. We just get all mad when we lose out. I had 10 more years, or I had 20 more years. I had 40, I had 50. You think. But none of us has even a moment coming. None of us has a moment due. Like, before I existed, guys were like, well, I owe it to Paul that I should make him alive. And he definitely needs to get the full 120 years because he's prime uncreated being. He's one of the top, shelf. No, it's not like that at all. We're flawed beings. God brought us in to demonstrate His power, and also because to do something good to us, to bless us. His eye is good. Man's eye is evil because God is good. God sees Himself as good. He gives good things to people. He blesses people, sometimes some more than others. And it makes those who are not as blessed envious. But envy is not the proper response to that. Like Cain and Abel. Cain envied his brother and it led to murder and further separation from God. It was bad enough when he made an improper offering. It's unsuitable for whatever reason. There's lots of theories about that. He offered grain and stuff, and he had sin or something. It wasn't his best. Didn't matter. Doesn't really matter. The point is, it was not acceptable. Sometimes things we do are not acceptable to God. Job, though, from what we can tell within the context of the story, all he's done has been acceptable to God. And so, is it good to thee that thou shouldest oppress? To oppress means really to press down, usually. If it's the same word it usually isn't, let's see. Oppress. A shock, yeah. To oppress, wrong, or extort. Obviously, God isn't extorting him. But the idea of being pressed under pressure from things. And of course, he said all these horrible things. Oppress is actually kind of a light. Destroy was a lot more of an apt term. So this might be an understatement, a figure, where you, whatever the opposite of a hyperbole is, where you kind of bring emphasis to something. It's like, like when people, sarcastically refer to something, I was like, oh, this little outing, but it's like some big involved thing, right? So I wonder if that isn't that. Thou shouldest oppress. Oppress. Or thou shouldest despise the work of thy hands, and shine upon the counsel of the wicked. Because, the wicked were the ones who came and robbed him. There were people who robbed him. It wasn't just, there were multiple aspects to his disaster, including, if it was just the Sabaeans and just the other folks that came and stole his camels and all that stuff, that's one thing. But it's another thing when the wind just comes out of the east and blows the whole house down on his family, letting you know this is something that involves divine authority. Because remember, Satan can have authority to use certain divine power, or things that would seem to us divine or at least angelic, like when it talks about Antichrist having power to bring fire down from heaven. Though when I did Revelation recently, we did speculate about that, and the aspect which, there is a kind of fire from heaven kind of peace and kind of work, and that's what we've got a lot of in this world. There's a lot of fire from the sky burning up a lot of people. That's not good. Is it good unto thee that thou shouldest oppress? Is this what, is it good to you? And despise the work of the, and shine upon the counsel. No, again, to shine means what? Like cause thy face to shine. And it means sort of like give approval. And like I said, it's not really untrue. God said, oh, you think so, Satan? Okay, I'm giving you what you want. I mean, when you ask God for something and he says yes, that's kind of like having his face shine upon you. Oh, look, he says yes. Granted, Do you have eyes of flesh? Do you see as a man seeth? Are thy days as the days of man? Now, I think the rhetorical answers to all these questions, of course, is no. Now, through the Lord Jesus Christ, this has been turned over, and God has had eyes of flesh, and has seen as man seeth, and was subjected to the days of men, and the years of men, meaning the limited lifespan, limited, days. Your day is limited. We have a day. We have to, our day and nights. Are God's days as the days of man? That's also an interesting passage, considering, like things like Genesis, where people are all, those are 24-hour days before the sun was created. And so the word, of course, in Hebrew, as many people have attested, scholars, it does not have a very strict meaning as that. It can refer figuratively to longer periods of time, and also, and certainly in many places, it's been made up. It's been said in several places, anyways. Like with the prophet who says, "A day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day." But also here, are your days as the days of a man? Are our days the same as his days? What meaning, like one single day? Like, what is a day to God versus what a day is to us? What it represents to us? It's toil. It's we need to sleep at the end of the day. It's like we got to eat. We have certain things we got to do every day. And is God's day like that? Probably not. And what's his year like? The seasons and harvest and all that. His year, is it our year? Does he measure a year by how long it takes the earth to go around the sun? Is that God's year? The rhetorical question that seems to suggest no, but also that we don't know the answer either, like well, what is that relationship? That you inquire after my iniquity. And say, what do you have to do with the world of men that you even care about my sin? And this is a question that a lot of people will put to God, like, why does God care about what I do in my private realm? Mostly people are offended that God doesn't like their sexual immorality, their masturbation and their fornication and all that. And they like to, and those are, while certainly fornication is the greater sin, you're involving someone else, and the other one is a lesser one, but still, they want to live their immoral lives. And those restrictions really bug them. They don't, a lot of people have no problem with thou shalt not kill, unless we really don't like them. Because it seems like everyone has people they'd like to kill. I mean, not every individual, but like groups of people, political interests. There are people that they hold in very low esteem. We're in a very tumultuous time right now. So why does God even care about my sin, my iniquity, and searches after my sin? Are you on my level that my sin would even matter to you? And like I said, I think these two chapters go up against a Christian idea, which I don't think is really based on, well, let me see. Is it based on the Bible? Not as far as I can tell. It's totally based on a philosophical assumption, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what else to call it. The assumption is that sin, all sin is against God, and since He's an infinite being, they all are infinitely bad. You know what I mean? Like that guy says, who we know is wrong, the Namathite. What does he say? That God hasn't punished you half as much as you deserve it. Or you deserve far worse. Yeah, I know therefore that God exacteth of thee less than thy iniquity deserveth. That's sort of the mindset of a lot of Christians, that your iniquity deserves infinite punishment. And God, and the things you suffer in this world are just a taste of what He has waiting for you if you don't accept Him now. Which I think is a pretty reprehensible way to preach the gospel. I don't buy into that. And it's part of the underpinning of the eternal torment doctrine. It's that, they have to be tortured forever because they sinned against God. Again, there are places where it says there are sins that are not. All sins are not necessarily sins like that against, like they wound him, they damage him. No. Though David's sentiment is, against thee, the only have I sinned. Because I think there is a lot of times, especially for a believer, when I sin, it is against him, because it's like, I'm supposed to know better. You know what I mean? Most people's sins are just against things that in the world and against their conscience, and easily render them unworthy of everlasting life. But when they multiply it, but Job himself, the point about him is that God is not exacting of him anything for his sins. It's not his sin that this has anything to do with. And also, I just think that that concept is faulty. That that the things that God would punish us, that the sin would not have a, like they say, let the punishment fit the crime, right? In the Old Testament, the worst punishment, as far as physically you could give someone short of execution, was 40 stripes. And that was lest your brother should seem violent to you. And there's all kinds of things in the law that indicate that the law is not about respect of persons. A sin against a great person is not a greater sin than a sin against a lesser person. Now, God is a different thing, but we can't even really touch or hurt God. All we can do is displease Him. We've already all been condemned. The only thing that's going to change any of that is redemption. Redemption to the blood of Christ is what changes that situation of us being all condemned. And because the sins we commit in this finite life, they aren't like weighing on God eternally, and now you got to pay for it forever. And even that, that's going to just be so satisfying for the Lord. All that. All that ruckus down in the black pits of hell. Anyways, you know that I'm not wicked. So that's what he's saying. My iniquity, my sin, they're at a man's level. They're a man's iniquity, a man's sin, and I'm not wicked. So his sins are like mistakes, little things that he has committed. That maybe unintentionally. You can sin unintentionally, especially under the old law. If he's under the law, he might have easily unintentionally sinned. And they make offerings for such things. Because the old law had a lot of stuff. I don't know that Job is under the old law. There's no reference to Moses here. Though certainly, the way Job is written, it feels to me like a Babylonian time period, like the level of sophistication And also because at that time, a lot of Jews had just gone through that. And much like the Holocaust, like what did we do? To all be lumped in like, obviously there's always, among every group of people, there's people who will give that group a bad name by being bad. Just like we have the stereotypical, the racist white guy who hate, or whatever, the race. And then all the other races have their little stereotypes of their evildoer. And then Israel's no different. Right? And so they get stereotyped, and pretty soon all the Jewish people are being rounded up and put into boxcars and sent to the extermination camps. Just not good, obviously. Now, did they do anything to deserve that? See, some people want to, oh, they must have. They must have. No, they didn't. A lot of those people were innocent of any crime that would require them to be put to death like that. You know what I'm saying? The law of God, the Old Testament is very quite clear. There's things that are worthy of death and things that are not worthy of death. There are sins that are cleansed with blood, and there are things for which a meal offering is sufficient. When we're talking about, like, I forget. I'm not an expert on that, but I just know that there's different kinds of severity. There has always been severity. The point about God's justice is that, every man according to his works, not according to an arbitrary standard of infinity. Then everyone just gets infinite punishment. Forget it. It just doesn't. It's very intellectually off-putting from my point of view, because I don't understand how that can possibly work. All right, so your hands have fashioned me and have made me and fashioned me. That reminds me of Psalm 119. I think I actually want to. Thy hands have made me and fashioned me, give me understanding that I may keep thy commandments. Yet thou dost destroy me. He's walked with God, and God has shaped him. Just like you expect God to shape you. But also I know that I can be called upon to suffer and die for the Lord's sake. And that's the answer to that thou dost destroy me. He may bring my life to an end. And a lot of Christians have suffered a lot of things over time. It doesn't mean God was angry with them. Remember, I beseech thee that thou hast made me as the clay, and wilt thou bring me into dust again. Remember, you've made me as the clay. Okay, well, I just remind my lowest state. You made me. I'm your workmanship, and you're just going to bring me back to dust. Well, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Hast thou not poured me out as milk and curdled me like cheese? The relevance of those idioms are very obscure to me. Let me see here. Let me see. Oh, wait, verse 10, and I just want to look at the NIV. Did you not pour me out like the milk? See, they couldn't do anything with it either. They didn't have any interpretation. So, no help there. So, what would that mean? Poured out as milk. Well, I think about like when Jesus said, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are of joint, right? But, I don't know, this seems to be not as, it seems like something more positive, actually. You've poured me out like milk. Like poured out. Why do you pour out milk? Well, to drink it and to serve it. And curdled cheese. It's a process. It's an intentional thing. Cheese, you usually, go about curdling to make the cheese. Because then he says, and you've clothed me with skin and flesh. He seems to be building a case here, right? Will you bring me to dust? You took, it almost sounds like he's cooking up a man. He poured me out like milk, getting ready to make some oatmeal or some, malto meal, get the milk all hot and add the malto meal, and there you go. You're right. And curdle meal, oh, let's make some cheese and curdle it. I'm making my servant Job. I clothed him with skin and flesh. Fenced him with bones and sinews. He's a man, he's got pieces. Thou hast granted me life and favor. It's an important thing that God favors us. We have life, but also we have favor. Now, what we do with that favor is very important because it does sort of reveal, what is most true about us. Like I said, it's like to whom much is given, much is expected. You have the favor of God in this world. And it doesn't, because you could, on a certain sense, like people will say, the wicked are blessed. They enjoy his favor, so to speak. They, like I said, rains on the just and the unjust, and they participate in the same system that God has created, the same world that operates, and they are able to exploit it to get themselves rich. Part of that exists so that we would not envy them for that, or we should not, and to test that. I said, when Satan asked God if he would, he's like, hey, what do you think of my servant Job? When Satan decided, he said, well, how about this? How about that? Does he fear God for nothing? I said, he could have said, well, I'm all-knowing. I know Job's faithful. I don't need to test him. He could say the same thing. Oh, I know Paul. I made him. I fashioned him. I built him. I know all about him. I know every nook and cranny of his personality and everything. And so I don't got to guess. I don't have to put him to the test. I know. Well, he did it. He allowed Satan to do it. Because there's something about when you live out something that makes it more real than just you have the potential. If it was just our potential, then God would just choose fetuses and then raise us some other way, I guess. I don't know. But that's not how he does it. It's not how he chose to do it. Thy visitation hath preserved my spirit. Yeah, when God visiting us, what does that mean? Like the way in which we grow closer to God. We come to God according to the scriptures because God draws us to him. It's not that we loved him, but that he loved us first and reveals himself to us. We all need to be visited, and that visitation also is faith increasing. The word is paduka, pakuda, whatever, paduka, pakuda. Visitation, oversight, charge, punishment, appointment, care, custody. But all those things, like whether visitation, oversight, he's got to come in and take some oversight, Maybe dish out some punishment. Maybe dish out some rebuke. Maybe change things and reappoint. Or to care for. Maybe he sends something to comfort you. There's comfort, too. The Lord offers comfort, even in the midst of trouble. That's the most amazing part. So the word means to attend to. The attention of God. It is valuable, and we don't even really realize it. Because a lot of times we don't know it's happening. We're not, sometimes you look back and you see the hand of God through things, but at the time, often you don't. But the knowledge of those things and the actual, when they happen, it does have a sort of a preservational effect, because like I said, when the Lord does those things, it helps increase my faith. It makes me feel more confident that he is looking out for me and guiding me and teaching me. Because I have, whether it be correction or care or whatever. These things hast thou hid in thy heart. I know that this is with thee. If I sin, then thou markest me. And when he say, what have you hid in your heart? Well, my life and the things you've done to make me who I am, I think. And I know that's with you. You know all about me, what you've done with me, where you've taken me. So if I sin, then you mark me, and you will not acquit me for mine iniquity. Again, that's like it says in the Old Testament. He will not forgive your sins. Jesus is the same way. He will not forgive sin unless you come to him first. I mean, what I'm saying is, when you get to the day of judgment, if you haven't reconciled yourself with God, if you just let sin hang around and you haven't done something about it through Christ, you're a marked man. It's interesting that if I sin, then they'll mark me. The mark of the beast does have something to do with sin, just like the seal of God has something to do with righteousness. Something to do. Let's see about today. I was thinking about the relationship between faith and, what was it? Oh, let me have a sip. Well, faith and obedience. And I was like, well, I don't think they're not the same thing, but obedience scales with faith. I mean, as faith gets bigger, obedience should become also stronger. Of course, right? If someone was extremely disobedient, what you will find is very little faith. If someone is, moderately disobedient, you have moderate faith, and, I think there's going to be somewhat of that. Because whatsoever is not of faith is sin, as they say, as Paul said. In that sense, I get it, because it's like faithless things lead to sin, whereas faithful things lead to righteousness. All right, not acquit me from my iniquity. And you're not going to get off from the judge. When we have iniquity, we must appeal to God's mercy and grace, to, again, accept our sacrifice. But we don't have any more sacrifices to offer. He has already accepted Christ. And then you've accepted Jesus and put your faith in him. And that's what that means to me. It's like, accept Jesus. What do you mean? You have faith. And then your sin is forgiven. So you don't need to worry about this question. Is God searching my iniquity? Is he marking me? No. He's marked you. He's put his seal upon you and marked you as righteous. He's painted you with the righteousness of Christ. And that's what he sees, at least judicially. It doesn't mean God doesn't see your mistakes when you make them. That's why he also corrects and chastens and punishes even. Because if we do go astray, if God loves us, then we can expect God, like a loving father, to intercede in the negative. And with negative reinforcement. Don't do that. If I be wicked, woe unto me. If I be righteous, yet will I not lift up my head. Meaning I'm righteous. The idea of lifting up the head is a prideful gesture. I stand on my own 2 feet, on my own righteousness. Job is not saying that. If I'm wicked, woe unto me. But he's not wicked. It's not that he never sinned in his life or anything like that, but he's completely reconciled with God, and God has already affirmed this, that he is a just man and perfect, who fears God and eschews evil. That's who Job is. He's not a wicked man, not at all. He is a righteous man. Well, there's no such thing. From God's perspective, there are. Absolutely, in this absolute sense, yeah, there's none righteous, no, not one. But God will call certain people righteous because he calls them righteousness, because he's blotted away their sins and they've reconciled themselves to him. They've submitted themselves to his will. I'm full of confusion, therefore see thou my affliction. I like the word confusion here. Sometimes it's not the best translation, so I'm going to check it before I start waxing eloquent about how great it is that he's confused. Or just how much that makes sense to me. Right? He's confused. I'm confused about all this. Why are you punishing me? That seems to be what we're getting from Job. A lot of confusion. He's like, you've made me, you've fashioned me, you've built me up, all these things, right? And I know you're just and holy, but you're destroying me. And that's why his friends are getting all caught up, and they're like, well, the only thing we know is that God is right and you must be wrong and you're probably a liar. confusion. Qualon. It says it means disgrace or dishonor. Oh, and also the pudenda. I don't know what they include that. Because, like if you say your disgraceful parts, it's like that's referring to the things that the private parts, as we would say, but they call it the disgraceful parts. So that's why it's also refers to. It's a euphemism for the genitals, and that's that. And so does that mean in this case it's a euphemism for the genitals? No, it's not. Just because something can be used some way, you got to use the context to figure out if you should apply that. And I would say no, he's not referring to that here. I remember running into that word years ago at a Bible study, and it really sidetracked someone because they really wanted to read pudenda into the verse, and it was really frustrating. Okay, I'm full of confusion. Again, I think I like the word confusion, but it means more like disgrace. Let me see what it was. Oh, 1 second. Yeah, okay. I'm going to read this from the Helps Word Studies because I hear the cultural and historical. We don't really get disgrace or things like that anymore. It primarily denotes a state of shame or disgrace, used in the Old Testament to describe situations where individuals experience dishonor, often as a result of sin, disobedience, or defeat, but not in this case. The term conveys a sense of public humiliation and loss of respect. Certainly, Job has gone through that. Everyone knows all this stuff has happened to him, and he's so afflicted. And even his friends, his buddies who know him quite well, are coming and just piling on. It must be your fault. In ancient Israelite society, honor and shame were pivotal social values. Honor was associated with social standing, reputation, and the respect of one's community, while shame was seen as a severe social stigma. The concept of kolon reflects the communal nature of ancient Near Eastern cultures where individual actions could bring either honor or shame, not only upon themselves, but also upon their family and community. The loss of honor or the experience of shame was often seen as a consequence of failing to uphold the covenant with God, but not in Job's case. See how they put that? It's interesting there, because this is the exception. But as often true, the exception often proves the rule, because God has also promised that we reap what we sow. If we do bad things, we're going to reap bad things. But it's not always obvious in this world that it happens like that. In Ecclesiastes, that's one of the things Solomon talks about, just what a travesty it is. And it seems like the wicked prosper. And it can only be reconciled by the judge afterwards. Because you can't find justice in this world. There isn't. There's never complete justice, never cosmic justice. There's only temporary justice, partial justice, somewhat justice, but never total justice. All right. Confusion, therefore, see my affliction. See what I'm going through. Again, confusion, disgrace, or shame, for it increases. You huntest me as a fierce lion. Again, thou showest thyself marvelous upon me. The lion, again, is a very frequently used some animal to symbolize that predatory nature. And so, it's pretty cut and clear there. Renewest thy witness against me. Renew, what is that? It means to renew or repair. I'm not going to bring it up on the screen. So renew's fine. You renew your witness against me. Restating the argument. Increase thine indignation upon me. Changes in war are against me. What's that, changes? It means a change. Well, a lot of times change was a sign of not necessarily good in the olden days. things change. Like suddenly there's no rain here. Suddenly we gotta leave. Let's see. So it says, So instead of saying like changes in war, they say increase your anger towards me. Okay, and your forces come against me wave upon wave. I don't know, but I can't add much to it in that case since I don't really know. Changes, because like I said, good and bad changes, unexpected changes in a certain context. Obviously, change can be a bad thing. Especially, and certainly Job. I mean, what is his change that's upon him? Suddenly his whole life is gone. And there you go. It's change enough. Okay. Wherefore then hast thou brought me forth from the womb? Why'd you bring me out of the womb? Why'd you bring me out? Oh, that I had been given up the ghost, and no eye had seen me. I should have been as though I had not been. I should have been carried from the womb to the grave. Just straight from the womb to the grave. Right from the bed of birth to the long home. Are not my days few? Cease then, and let me alone, that I may take comfort a little. Before I go where I shall not return. Before I go up, let me have some comfort before I die. Leave me alone. And I think he's talking to his friends at that point, like, hey, I should never have lived. Leave me alone. So I can take some comfort before this is all done. I'm going to the land of darkness and shadow of death, like the land, do I walk through the shadow of death, the land of the shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death. The land of darkness is darkness itself and a shadow of death without any order. What is any order there? Oh, without any order. So disorder. Wait a second. Huh. So yeah. It means literally like not ordered. It's one word, like not ordered, disordered. There's no order. Well, it's really the void and the chaos from which, all things that don't exist spring, so to speak. There's no order to it. I haven't been brought together. Think about that contrast with look at the contrast. It's really interesting, right? I think it is. When he talks about pouring me out his milk, curdled like cheese, clothed me with skin and flesh, fenced me with bones and sinews. It's ordered. It's all, things have their place. Granted me life and favor. Visited me. He did all those things. That's order. God orders life. Life is ordered. You know what I mean? It's an organized principle. One of the things they talk about entropy is as things break down, they lose energy and stuff, and that's death. And it's ultimate disorder. So disorder is in death in that emptiness of non-existence. They definitely closely go together because the way scientists look at our world, they say everything's running down. Entropy, eventually everything's going to be just zero. It's going to all zero out, and there'll be no order to the universe anymore, but just empty death. Of course, the Lord will renew it long before then. But anyways, so we're going to conclude there. We got a couple minutes, but I'm not going to delve into chapter 11 today, and I'm feeling a little tired here, so I'm going to get going. I don't like to push it. I want to make good studies that are interesting. So anyways, thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
My soul cleaveth to the dust. Quicken thou me according to thy word, I have declared my ways. And thou heardest me, teach me thy statutes, make me to understand the way of thy precepts. So shall I talk of thy wondrous works. My soul melteth for heaviness. Strengthen thou me according